Hello and welcome to episode 140 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Of course, I am your host, Rick Doherty. We're going to jump right into things this week because my good friend Marisa from Chicago is on the show to talk about the D23 Destination Disney announcements from last month. I also have a few other topics to discuss with Marisa before we get into new things coming to the parks. With that in mind, let's welcome Marisa right now. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So we are going to get to those D23 Destination Disney announcements in just a few minutes, but I have two topics that I've been wanting to discuss with you that are unrelated, but are related to things that have been going on the show recently. So I took a road trip to Chicago for a week. I had some concerts, and I wanted to go to Wrigley Field. So Wrigley Field was a place I've always wanted to visit, and if anybody who doesn't know baseball, it's the second oldest ballpark still in operation. It has been there forever. Marissa's making faces on Zoom. So it is this thing that has been a bucket list item of mine. And I had tickets to the day game, and I'm going to say first and foremost, I do believe that it lives up to the hype. And I described it when I would go to a regular baseball stadium that's a nice baseball stadium. I was using Citizens Bank Park in Philadelphia as an example. It's nice. There's nothing super special about it. And I would say when I walk in there, it's like walking into Magic Kingdom and seeing Cinderella Castle. And you're like, okay, that's impressive. I like this. I'm going to have fun for the next X amount of hours. When I walked into Wrigley, it was like seeing Main Street USA in Disneyland. You're like, I don't know what it is about this, and it's not as technologically advanced as some of the other ones, but there's just something intrinsically more special about this. Now, all that being said, I now understand why Marisa, as a Chicago native, is a White Sox fan instead of a Cubs fan, because it doesn't look like being a Cubs fan even feels like it's real. It feels like it's so much about the drinking and about the party and about the atmosphere of the stadium, and it's not in the real Chicago at all. It's just in this fancy neighborhood with a lot of super expensive houses, and it just feels like it's not a real environment. Did I enjoy it? Did I love it? Absolutely. But I could see why, as somebody in that area, the White Sox would feel more Chicago. So do I have that right? Is that sort of an apt description?
Yeah, I mean, look, I do have to give Wrigley its props. It's a really cool stadium. It's really cool that it's right in the middle of that neighborhood. There are genuine Cubs fans who are baseball fans. But I feel like more often than not, it's the baseball team of it's like that cool, I want to just support a team and go out drinking to one of the 17 bars that are right there around it kind of things. My dad grew up on the south side of Chicago, so his whole family is White Sox fans. We're all White Sox fans. I am incredibly biased in that assessment of Cubs fans, but there does feel like there's something more intentionally baseball about White Sox games, because there's nothing around that stadium, that's for sure.
I spent a week there. This is just a very quick observation, but my opinion in that week is that White Sox fans are White Sox fans and Cubs fans are Wrigley fans.
That's the perfect way to put it.
Awesome. So I'm glad I got to have that conversation with you, because I have been dying to have it, because I really did have a great time, and I'm glad that I crossed it off the list. But driving on 94 past the White Sox stadium, I'm like, all right, I got to see one there now and see how it compares.
Yeah, do Sox Park next.
The other thing that I wanted to discuss with you before we get to Destination Disney is your favorite show at Walt Disney World. We've talked about it a number of times. is Fantasmic. Well, very recently I went to see Fantasmic again, and I have noticed something that I don't like. This is a trend that I think is really bothering me. I have to go a couple more times to see if it's as big of a trend as I think. But if you've gone and done Fantasmic, they funnel everybody in. They try to start you off in the middle and then work your way out to the sides. So there are people who wait around so that they can show up and be on the very, very right hand side of the seating section. And then what they're doing, and I hate this with the white hot intensity of 1,000 suns, is with about 8 minutes left in the show, because most nights Fantasmic actually starts while the park is still open, so that it's ending at 9 o'clock at the same time as the park. So these people are getting up with enough time to try to run and get in line for one more ride by 8:59, so they can sort of stretch everything out. And listen, I understand when you're on a vacation, you have to make every minute count. But in my humble opinion, either do Fantasmic or don't do Fantasmic. But if you're doing it and then ruining it for everybody else around you by getting up and trying to storm out at the very pinnacle of the show, the point where the show is having its big zenith, and you see Mickey on the top of the mountain, and I don't even know why you want to see Fantasmic if you're not staying for the end of it, unless it's just to cross something off your list. And at a certain point, just crossing things off your list isn't worth it.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that because I noticed that in February I went to see Fantasmic with my mom. It was the one nighttime show that she requested to see. She really wanted to go see it. And the same thing happened to us. You know, we were sitting watching Fantasmic 8, 10 minutes before the show ended. People started getting up and leaving. And at first it was only like a couple people. And then it became just like a steady stream of people getting up and walking past our row, to the point where then we had to stand to try to like do that shuffle thing where you're leaning around people as they're walking in front of you to try to see any of the show. So then the people behind us have to stand and they're trying to do the same thing. And it really just ruins it for everyone. I don't know. I love this show, but I feel like it's pretty inconsiderate to do that.
And it's such a double-edged sword for Disney because they have to let you leave for emergencies or if your kid can't handle it. And I understand maybe you get claustrophobic in crowds and you're trying to just leave the park a couple minutes before it ends and trying to beat that wave. But there are way too many people doing it. And it's so obvious what they're trying to do. And I just don't like it. Listen, I'm a fan of the 8:59 rule. We did it with Slinky Dog Dash the one time. You get in line right at the end of the day, and they will let you ride if you get there 1 minute before the park closes. But to really ruin such an amazing thing, like you should basically be saying, unless there's an emergency, when I sit down and take up this seat, I'm staying till the end. It's a half-hour show. It's not a 3-hour baseball game like we were talking about before. Like, most adults should be able to handle this without having to get up and down. And that was just something that really, really bothered me. And I don't know what Disney can do about it from their standpoint. This just seems like one of those things where you just have to be courteous to the people around you and realize the earth doesn't revolve around you.
Yeah, I agree. And like you said, for people who have medical concerns or claustrophobia or something like that, obviously that's not what we're talking about here. You know, my mom gets claustrophobic. I have a medical issue. We typically sit on the very end of a bench. So that way, if we do need to leave, if it gets like too much of a crowd, we can just get out without disturbing people. And I wish that there was some way for Disney to say, you know, like this far right section is reserved for people who aren't planning to stay through the whole show. And obviously, logistically, there's no possible way they could ever do that. But I just wish there was some way to appease those people who are like, hey, I've seen it before. I don't need to stay through the very end and get caught in the congestion. And also maintain the integrity of the show for the people who either don't get to see it very often or who haven't seen it before.
The only possible solution I can see is starting it at 8:20 instead of 8:30 and just give everybody those 10 minutes. But then you are really pulling a number on the cast members because now everybody's doing it. Now the line for Tower of Terror, which is right there, is going to be 70 minutes at the end of every night. So it's definitely 6 to 1, half a dozen of the other, but I just wish people would be more considerate. And it doesn't bother me as much because I can do it so often. If this would have been my one chance to see Phantasmic, like if I was your mom and it was the one show I wanted to see on that vacation that she took, and I have to stand up and move around and people are cutting me off and I don't get to see it right at the very end, I'm just saying that would bother me a little bit. But now let's move on to some positives and these D23 Destination Disney announcements, because there was a lot. So some of it I think we're going to have strong opinions. Some of them I think we're holding out hope that maybe they are half steps where we don't get bad stuff happening, but we'll move into that. First of all, no word yet on the Beyond Big Thunder Mountain project. This was an expansion to Magic Kingdom that was probably going to include from the concept art Encanto, Coco, and Villains. I am still hoping we get something related to that in the future, but no announcements at Destination Disney. Animal Kingdom. Here we go. We have been talking for a long, long time about not wanting Zootopia to come to Animal Kingdom. We were thinking this was going to be in the form of a Zootopia land. And out of nowhere, the announcement was a Zootopia show to replace It's Tough to Be a Bug, which is the 3D show that happens inside the Tree of Life. So, Marisa, would this be maybe a half step that wouldn't upset you quite as much? Or what are you thinking about this?
Yeah, I'll take it if it means we don't get a land. I mean, do I love it? No. But, you know, I get where they're coming from. They want to update. It's tough to be a bug. They want to do something more modern, more recent. So I understand that aspect. I wish they could have done something else, but it'll probably end up being a cute show. Parents can bring their kids, whatever. I'll take it if it means we don't get a land. That's fine.
Doing my due diligence as a podcast host, the second I heard this information, I was like, you know what? I have to go back to Animal Kingdom and I have to watch It's Tough to Be a Bug because I don't do it very often. And it did leave me with a bunch of thoughts. One is I'm actually kind of upset that this show is leaving Animal Kingdom because it is a story that very much fits with the theme of Disney's Animal Kingdom, is conservation and the need to protect some of these things we don't think about protecting all of the time. And it does talk about how we need bugs to survive. And it does it in a very cute way that kids can enjoy. So that's the first thing. I am kind of sad that this is gone. But we have talked in the past about Zootopia. Yes, it's about animals, but they're playing the role of people. And the allegory in Zootopia has absolutely nothing to do with conservation and is more about socio-economic, socio-political items in the real world. Go watch A Bug's Life, and it's the exact same thing. A Bug's Life is not about bugs in any form or fashion. But what Disney did was created a show around those bugs that did teach us about bugs. So if they can do something like that with Zootopia, where they take these characters that we already know from another situation and teach us about animals and teach us about conservation. Maybe it'll work. I'm just kind of sad we're losing It's Tough to Be a Bug, even though I 100% know why, because it's been there for 25 plus years already.
Yeah. If they can do Zootopia and make it a show where you're learning about the different environments featured in the movie that aren't, the city, I think then it has a lot of potential to be a great educational tool. What I don't want to see happen is for Disney to just do like almost a clip show of the movie and have it mostly taking place in this city where like you're running down the street and there's the donut chasing you, things like that. So it does depend on how they do it. And I hope that they can pull it off.
Obviously, our concern was that Zootopia Land would be taking over parts of Dino Land USA. And it does look like we are getting a retheme to Dino Land USA. And this would be in the form of Tropical Americas. And we might see some stuff from Encanto in there, maybe some Indiana Jones. Like, whenever this is concept art, we're definitely always really, really guessing. And the Indiana Jones ride in Disneyland, which Marissa just recently got the chance to ride, but we'll talk about that in a future episode, is the same track layout as Dinosaur in Dino Land USA. So it definitely would kind of make sense to have Indiana Jones if you can keep that theme of conservation. What are your thoughts about this Dino Land replacement looking different than we thought?
I think it's great. Bringing up Disneyland briefly, it's actually really funny. I was in Disneyland during the D23 announcements when this was all happening. And the night before this announcement was made, I was getting off Indiana Jones with my sister, and we were walking out of the queue. And I was like, I know they want to retheme Dino Land, and I really think if they could do like South America, something with that, it would be really cool. And maybe they could pull in Indiana Jones through that, and maybe we could get a version of this ride there. And then the next day they announced this, and I was like, did they bug my phone? I think they bugged my phone. But I'm on board. I think,
Have you ever pulled your phone out of your pocket while you're walking around the theme park and it's just open to the Disney app and you never clicked on, you didn't click on it. So somehow it opened in your pants or whatever. So that's probably what happened and they heard you and they stole it.
Yeah, they put it together in a span of like 3 hours. They did that whole presentation. I think that it's a great idea. I think in my ideal world, we'd get to keep Dinosaur as Dinosaur and get a new Indiana Jones ride because I do really like the Dinosaur ride. And I think if they could just update it a little bit, that would be enough because it is a lot of fun.
I wish
But
we
if it
could
does
get
get
an
replaced,
Indiana Jones ride in Hollywood Studios instead of Animal Kingdom and getting to keep Dinosaur. But definitely you have to upgrade Dinosaur because it has seen better days right now.
yeah, if they could just update it and keep the same ride story and like maybe redo the video but keep the same script, I think that would be perfect. But I do think that Tropical Americas is a really fun idea and a great way to kind of expand the footprint of Animal Kingdom in a way that makes a lot of sense.
And Animal Kingdom, while it is your favorite park and you will swear by it, and I do believe it is probably my second favorite park if I really, really thought about it, it needs more. I find myself just sitting around when I'm there. Like, yes, it's fun to explore the trails, but if you're there after 4 o'clock, there is nothing to do there besides get in line for rides. So if they're going to continue to have this park be a park that starts shutting down around 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, they're going to need more rides because I don't want to wait 70 to 90 minutes for Flight of Passage or Na'vi River Journey in Pandora. I want to have more rides and more opportunities to get in a shorter line at that time of the day.
Have you considered single rider Everest on repeat?
Yes. Yes. What was your
Totally
record?
joking.
20, right?
20, yeah. Yeah.
Someday I'll beat your record. I'll put in 21 and then we'll start getting into a fight there. So, moving over to what is my favorite park, Epcot. We finally got the Figment meet and greet. It has already started. It's already opened. Of course, everybody loves this little purple son of a gun. So it was 6-hour waits on the first day. Maybe eventually Disney will get the hint that they should refurb this ride because guess what? He's popular. Now, I will say, I am not a huge fan of the costume. I like the old school Figment meet and greet costume with Figment written on the sweater. They're trying to make the Figment meet and greet look way too much like Figment on the ride and not like Figment the stuffed animal.
I can see why they're doing it, but it would be cool to have him in the original costume.
It's not a huge complaint. I'm glad we have a Figment meet and greet. Obviously, 6-hour lines say everybody else is happy for it as well. I mean, there is a little bit of FOMO there. I'm sure there are people who are just doing it for Instagram and social media and stuff. But people like Figment. He's a popular character. Between the popcorn buckets, the AP magnets, all of the merchandise now for the festivals, there's always some sort of Figment option. Now, looking at this meet and greet, it is time to invest in the Figment ride. Give us something good. You can shut it down right now because it only gets 5 to 10 minute waits. It's not eating as many people as you think. Now, maybe they want to wait until they get Moana Journey into Water completely opened and people are being pulled to other parts of Epcot. But I think now, with Guardians of the Galaxy and some of these other rides, Remy's Ratatouille Adventure, we can shut down Figment and get it back to a level deserving of a popular character.
Yeah, I think if they were to say, okay, we're just going to shut this down and we're going to do a refurb. I mean, when it opened back up, the lines for that would be astronomical. Like right now, like you said, it's not really eating people. People aren't really coming there from other areas of the park with the intention to ride that ride. It's more of like we have to check it off or we stopped at the bathroom. There's a ride right here. But if they refurbed that, I mean, it would be getting 6-hour waits. It would be crazy because people love Figment and people want more Figment clearly in all areas of the park. The only downside with that is I'm so ready for Epcot construction to be done and for the park to be like fully operational, no walls. But I think it would be worth it.
And that's just one corner. You wouldn't even really notice it very much. And they could keep the store open and the Mickey meet and greet over there. They could keep that feeling like it's still an open area of the park.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, the next thing we're going to discuss might not be as convenient to shut down for a while, but it looks like they're going to do a reimagining to Test Track. This is going to be with the help of the sponsor Chevrolet. And this worries me. Not because I don't think we should get a new version of Test Track. I absolutely think we should get a new version of Test Track. But this is a ride that is always a 50-minute wait, 70-minute wait. And all of a sudden, all of those people are going to be out in Epcot because if they shut down this ride, it's going to make a major difference.
Yeah, this is going to impact the parks in a huge way. I'm excited for it because, we've talked about it in the past. I'm not the biggest fan of Test Track 2.0. I preferred the crash test dummy version. And if this goes back to its roots a little bit and is a little more like edutainment focused, I think I'd like that. However, I don't think that it's a need right now in the park. I feel like it's a want. And I'm really surprised that they announced this, and yet there's no word on a Spaceship Earth refurb, because I feel like that's a much bigger need. Like the screens, the audio, the timeline, that definitely needs an update more than Test Track does. So that was just very interesting to not hear anything about that, especially when it had previously been announced and then walked back. But I do think that focusing more on the world of motion aspect behind Test Track could lead to a really cool ride.
And you just look at that side of the park, and you have brand new Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind, eventually going to be taken off of the virtual queue system. So that will help. If Test Track goes down for a refurb, a lot of those people will just start waiting in line for Cosmic Rewind. But then you have Test Track, which has 50 to 75-minute waits. We may prefer the older version, or we may wish that there was a better version of it now, but it's certainly popular enough. And then you have what was going to be the Play Pavilion, which has been under construction and nobody has talked about for years what they're going to do with that building. And then you have Mission Space, which I like, but I seem to be like the only person in the world who likes this ride, and it's always a 5-minute wait for green and a 10-minute wait for orange, or a 10-minute wait for green and a 15-minute wait for orange. It just feels like if there's something you're going to fix over on that side of the park, it would be that pavilion that is completely empty right now, or the pavilion that has a ride that is not popular.
Yeah, geez, that's a great point. And just even more so makes me wonder, what about Test Track is leading them to prioritize this refurb? Like, is Chevrolet sitting there going, you know what? I want to change this, and we're going to give you the money to do it. So we want to start it now. Is that what's happening behind the scenes? Because otherwise, I'm not sure what the motivation would be to take down a super popular ride like that right now.
Now, from the concept art, it looks like this is going to move to be and this is just, of course, completely conjecture, just looking at one frame of concept art. But it looks like it might be now a slow, dark ride that tells a story that just at the end now has a thrill element, which I do think would be awesome. But there's so much on that side of the park that is wasted space. I don't know
Yeah.
why this is the top priority.
I would really love to know the thought process behind this decision. Honestly, when I first saw the concept art, it reminded me of E.T. over at Universal, which is it's a slow ride. So
Well, then I'm
maybe that's what
sold.
their
If it's
goal
going to
is.
be like ET, then I'm down for that.
Hey, if they pump that scent in, I'm in.
Yes, and I will say one thing about Test Track is it does not smell great. It is one of those rides that whatever they did in that queue, it just picks up people's sweat into the carpet or something. I don't know what's going on there.
No, that's so true.
Luminous, the Symphony of Us, the new nighttime spectacular, replacing, ironically enough, Epcot Forever. The second time Epcot Forever will be replaced by something. Disney didn't name that very well. It's going to be starting December 5th of 2023. This was actually pushed back further than they originally had estimated. I'm going to give Luminous an open mind, but I liked Harmonious, and I wish we could have just kept Harmonious. Yep, the barges were there during the day. I don't care. I still loved that show, so I'm hoping that Luminous is more harmonious than it is Epcot Forever.
That's my exact hope. We've talked about our love of Harmonious before. There's no surprise there. And so I'm optimistic for Luminous. I think that it certainly seems like it has elements of Harmonious with, barges and things like that. In this case, they're movable, but I'm hopeful that it will kind of keep that same spirit. It's hard when there's a show coming in essentially replacing a show that you really like, because let's be real, Epcot Forever is just their like default interim Epcot show, which again, the name is fantastic for that. But I'm definitely hopeful to see where it goes. I think the Symphony of Us is a really cool tagline that kind of makes me think of Reflections in the sense of the togetherness of it all. So I think it could be a cool blending of those two shows, hopefully.
Well, Marissa, to paraphrase Britney Spears, oops, we did it again. We have gone too long to make this a one episode version. So we are going to come back next week. We're just going to be right back next week. And we are going to be talking about changes to Country Bear Jamboree. We're going to be talking about more characters coming to Epcot and a whole lot more. There is still a lot happening in Walt Disney World and elsewhere around the world that might impact Walt Disney World, and we're going to talk about it next week. Thanks for being here, Marissa.
Thanks for having me.
Please make sure to go to the Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty YouTube channel and like videos, comment on them, and of course, subscribe to the channel. This has been episode 140. And next Thursday, Marissa will be back to continue our talk about the D23 Destination Disney announcements. Until then, have a great week.